Do you think it's rational that other journalists don't care because they really won't be doing, I mean, cowardly, but also rational because they wouldn't be doing the type of journalism that was published by WikiLeaks? So, on its face, it seems like, what are they doing? This can be used against them. But maybe they are right because they know they wouldn't ever do the type of journalism that would get them in trouble.
I think
Uh,
so. They don't they don't have any intention of doing what the work Julian did. And most of them, so many of them just want access. So the last thing they want to do is make the government angry with them. So they, in order to stay in their good graces, never defy them. And they certainly wouldn't do anything to create as much trouble in their lives as Julian has had in his. So they're more like, scribes or courtiers or something like that. So no, they don't care about Julian. They are very tightly allied with the people they're supposed to be reporting on.
Right.
Yeah, Margaret makes a good point. The way you rise within these news organizations is to act as a stenographer to power. That's what most Washington reporters are. I can't speak to the configurations of the New York Times now. It's certainly a far weaker news organization than when I was there. But there were people within the organization who attempted to challenge positions of power. And I felt that as a foreign correspondent reporting from Gaza or reporting from the war in the former Yugoslavia or during the Reagan administration when I covered the war in El Salvador and the war in Nicaragua. But you weren't just battling Washington. You were actually battling, as Margaret points out, the predominance of those journalists who make their living doing lunch with peoples of power. And so there was always an internal force within these news organizations that conspired against those of us who were attempting to report off the ground the reality of what was happening. And if you're just insistent, if you don't conform, eventually you become a management problem and you get pushed out, as I was pushed out. But there's a whole list of people. Cy Hirsch did a long investigation on Gulf and Western when he was at the New York Times, and the chairman of Gulf and Western, which was completely mobbed up, was inviting the publisher to private screenings at his lavish home, and that there was a version of it. It was published down. It was so watered down and neutered that it didn't say anything, and that's when Hirsch left the paper. Same thing with Sidney Schanberg, also a friend of mine. Sidney, who was made famous in the movie The Killing Fields, comes back and he starts writing about gentrification in New York City and how rent laws are being overwritten so people can be middle class, working class can be pushed out. And this angers the large real estate developers who, again, have close personal relationships with the publisher. And Sidney Schanberg ends up at the Village Voice and then later at Newsday. So Margaret is exactly right. It's a way to achieve prominence. Look at Thomas Friedman or any of these figures. The way to achieve prominence is to act as a stenographer to power. And within those organizations, if you attempt to challenge that ethos, you can maybe do it once or twice or a few times. But if you try consistently to do that throughout your career, then you are always pushed out. Many people remember the story of Gary Webb. Gary Webb, a good investigative reporter, had found out that the Contras, I was in Nicaragua at the time, so I know that it's true, the CIA was enabling the Contras, who were Reagan's, these guys were just old Somocistas, murderers, rapists. They're just those torturers. Scum of the scum, torturers, of course, and killers on top of it. Of so they were, to fund the Contras, they were allowing them, they would send down weapons and arms in C-130 transport planes through private companies like Air America, and then they would all go back filled with cocaine that would be sold on the streets of Oakland and other cities, creating the whole crack epidemic, or certainly one of the major forces behind the crack epidemic. And when that came out, I believe he published it in the one of the San Francisco papers, but in a California paper. They went after Gary Webb, but it's interesting that the mainstream media, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they were used to discredit Webb. And they never did any reporting. They just went to official sources. Webb, of course, ended up being completely blacklisted within the journalistic community and committed suicide. So I think, Margaret makes a very valid point that to achieve prominence within this system, one is a courtier. And if you attempt to work within the system and you're not a courtier, then you're not only attacked by the ruling and power elites, but you're attacked by people within those media institutions. I used to say that the real motto of the New York Times is do not significantly alienate those on whom we depend for money and access.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, and I mean, we see this prominently since 9/11, that there's no more like foreign correspondence. They called everybody home. Now they're just, right. So even people that were talking heads when I was growing up, the people that were doing the news, they were actually reporters at one point. Those were actually people that went out and investigated stories and reported their stories. And now there's not even a facade of foreign correspondence of any real substance. It's just like, we're just supposed to believe it because they say so. And they don't even put in, I don't see anybody ever on the ground anymore. Is there? I mean, is that something that even exists?
No, they've closed all the bureaus because it's again, with the contraction of the media industry, it's all become about profit and foreign running, especially if you're covering a war. It's extremely expensive. I mean, my budget, the first year I covered the war in the former Yugoslavia, and this is excluding salaries and we had 3 reporters and 2 photographers and translators and drivers and everything else, not to mention armored vehicles, which were $100,000 a pop, was $600,000. That doesn't happen now. And so, yes, it's all become gossip. So not only has the world outside the borders of the United States been rendered invisible, but the working class and the working poor in this country have been rendered invisible. And so it's all, it's like people sitting around Versailles or the Forbidden City gossiping endlessly about, what the elites are doing and who's in and who's out, kind of like working at the New York Times, much the same kind of ethos. And meanwhile, those people who are suffering either from the crimes committed by the empire or the crimes committed by the ruling elites internally have no voice. They don't exist because advertisers don't want their stories told, so they're not told.
Yeah. So, Margaret, I just wanted to ask you, when Chris mentions Versailles, I can't help but thinking of Kristen Sinema walking into to place her vote with the cake. She had actually brought cake with her, as if somehow that's cute. And so, I, of course, was thinking, well, then maybe we should get a guillotine, I mean, if she's going to have cake, then, maybe we should. So, yeah, well, they already hate me. So, well, I just want to know,
not against you. Yeah.
Oh, not against. Yeah. No, but first of all, there are people building guillotines, like I think in front of like Jeff Bezos' house and stuff like that. But, I wouldn't be walking around voting no against working people and putting out cake. I don't think that's a smart move. So I was wondering, what you thought about what your thoughts were.
Well, it was interesting to me that it was so blatant. I mean, that is the way members of the Senate feel about working people. That's how they feel about 99% of the country. Yeah. Complete disregard, hatred even. But we're at a point now where they don't even bother to hide the disdain that they have. And it's easy for them to have it because they don't get elected based on what ordinary working people need. They get elected if they can raise millions of dollars. Senators have to raise 30 million, 40, depending on the state, up to $40 million in order to be able to have a credible run for office. And that means they're not going to me or any of my neighbors. They are going to, Chris just talked about the real estate developers. They're a huge force in politics here in New York, and I guess throughout the country. So we have this phony democracy where we're told we have a voice when we don't. People get to be senators because they don't listen to the people, because they promise that they're not going to listen to the people. What did Biden say at his the fundraiser with the fat cats? Nothing will fundamentally change. And that is what they all spend their time doing in order to make sure that they get into office. We've seen these studies which confirm what we've already observed, that you don't get what you want, even if the person who you like or the party who you support wins. You still don't get what you want because the system is built to accommodate others and not you.
I think that's the one campaign promise he's actually kept. And of course, that was not made publicly. So got to congratulate him on that. Yeah.
Well, that's one reporter who did a good job by whoever, I can't even remember who it was, somebody for Bloomberg, I believe, who told us that story. That was significant.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.